All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another live stream. And apologies that it's been so long. I have just been super busy, just unbelievably busy this year. So it is good to be back. Now, to be honest, I probably won't be back as frequently as I would hope. Like, I already know next week my wife is going to be in Colorado, so I'm on daddy duty for my kids. But this has been a topic that's been really forefront of my mind because I've been heavily involved in this topic, and I've been really wanting to explore this just on my own personal machine, just to see how difficult it would get to do what we're going to be doing today. And what I discovered, and what you're going to discover along with me today, is actually it was very easy, surprisingly easy. So the one thing I do want to note before we jump into anything, so if anybody's watched the last couple of live streams, I've had just terrible luck with my internet. So if my internet cuts out, then it drops this stream and I'm not able to re-enter it just because the service I use doesn't allow me to re-enter it. So fingers crossed that doesn't happen today. But in case that does happen, I'm sorry. All right. So with that, we're going to jump right into things because we got a lot to cover today. And I'm excited and I want to hop right into it. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be interacting with the OpenAI API, specifically for their chat-based functionality. So many of you out there are probably already familiar with ChatGPT and the user interface, the ability to ask questions, things like that. We are going to be doing things in API form today. Now, why API? Why do we want to interact with the API as opposed to just using the user interface that OpenAI already offers? And there's nothing wrong with the user interface, but there are three big reasons that I think this is going to be an important topic. Number one, by far, is that this can be programmed into or incorporated into programmatic systems. And what I mean by that is, right now, if you want to use the ChatGPT interface as is, you have to open up a web browser like Chrome or Safari or anything like that, and you have to be a human to type out these things. Well, what if you wanted to build a system that automatically did these things for you? So, for example, I know Salesforce, for example, they have recently rolled out what is known as Einstein GPT. And what they're basically doing with that is they're using the ChatGPT functionality in the APIs and integrating that with their with their systems to be able to do a number of new functionalities that they didn't offer before. So, for example, they can use some of the information, programmatically put that through ChatGPT's APIs, and have that spit back out an email back out to a customer. So that is one example of how one company is doing it, but other companies may want to do something similarly. So that is by far the number one reason. So I said there are three reasons. So number two is it offers customization that is not native to the ChatGPT UI. So and let me just demonstrate really quick what I mean for you. Oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've done this. All right, so this is the ChatGPT interface. There you will see we can type out a message, but there is really no customization here at all. Like there is. And what I mean by customization is, and we'll get into this more in a little bit, but you can actually set different things that you do or do not want the API to be altered a little bit. Now, you can't go crazy, like you can't go retraining the model or anything like that, but there is some extra functionality that you can do. And so the specific thing that I noted in the the description of this post is we are going to cover how we can actually block in sensitive data from even hitting the API. So and this is important for, imagine you are a large company, you got a lot of people working in it, and several of them are probably privy to, sensitive information like social security number or something like that. OpenAI, to their credit, they really are trying to they say that they are trying to make sure that data is protected so that it's not getting exposed to anybody, but they also do say that they do keep that data for 30 days. And the reason they say they keep that data for 30 days is for debugging and analysis and other things like that. So that means if you put a social security number in there, OpenAI's got it for 30 days. And again, I would like to believe that they do have the proper security on everything, but it's a risk that nobody wants to take, and so the way to reduce that risk to zero is by making sure it never goes to the OpenAI API. And so that is number two reason why we want to use the API. And then the number three reason is that we can well, I already just I wrote these down and I kind of confused them. So the first one, so I guess I kind of talked about number three. Number three is customizing with custom filtering rules. Number two is customizing with different parameters. And so we'll talk about that here in just a second. So this is the standard interface that we're going to do. And so I want to go ahead and just jump to the end of just to show you what we are going to be building today, because I think this is really, really cool. So this is just a standard terminal, and I'm going to run a Python script here that is basically going to emulate the ChatGPT functionality. So I'm going to go ahead and start that up. I'm going to call Python 3 jet chat. So welcome to my ChatGPT Python script. Enter a prompt to begin the conversation. So what would I like to ask? All right, so I'm in Illinois. What is the capital of Illinois? All right, now we'll wait a second. All right, so there's a response. So what you don't, so this is the one of the things I'm already talking about here. You will see that this is kind of a goofy output. So what you don't see is that behind the scenes, I have set it to where this specific instance is supposed to respond as if it is Jar Jar Binks from Star Wars. And so we can continue this conversation. So I have asked it, what is the capital of Illinois? So I'm going to ask it a follow-up question without giving the context for the previous question, and it should pick that up just fine. So what I'm specifically going to do is, what is the largest city in that state? So I am not specifying in this secondary chat or prompt here what the state is. It should already remember that from the first point there. Sorry. All right. So what is the largest city in the state? The biggest city is... I should not. Oh my gosh. I actually just switched to the Jar Jar Binks like right before the stream. I didn't have it as something else, but... Oh my gosh, this is going to be an interesting stream today. Okay, so this is what we're going to end up building at the end of this whole thing. But I want to cover some, we're gonna make our way there slowly but surely. So by the way, if you would like to follow along with everything, let's say my internet does come out or cut out for some crappy reason, I do have all this code up on GitHub. So my personal GitHub is github.com/dkhundley, repositories, OpenAPI tutorial. And the chat interface that we're going to be loading up is in the source directory, and it's just this simple Python file here. It's actually, it looks complex, 140 lines, but me, I got to annotate everything. So there's actually not that much code here. Half of this is probably annotations and spacing. So it is really, really simple. Most of this is just core. So we're going to start slow in a Jupyter notebook, and then we're going to extract this out into a Python script. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we actually need to get signed up in order to be with OpenAI to do this. Now, as I put in the description for this video, this does require you to add a credit card for billing purposes. This is not something that you can do for free, which is the one downside. A little bit of a downside of using the API as compared to the vanilla ChatGPT UI. But it is not that bad. And I will actually, I'll go ahead and show you. So if we were, let's go to OpenAI.com. So this is the main homepage that you will see for OpenAI.com. In order to sign up for this, you're going to want to go to developers and then overview, and that will open up a splash screen here where it will ask you either to log in or sign up for a new account. Now, I am already logged in here, and so we're going to need 2 bits of information from OpenAPI in order to interact with our API appropriately. The first one is an organization ID, and the second one is the API key. So I would not advise, the organization ID, I believe, is not sensitive. That one you can expose. I wouldn't recommend going and flaunting it about, to be honest. But the API key specifically, be very, very careful not to expose that. If somebody gets if you accidentally push that up to GitHub and somebody gets a hold of that, they will take advantage of it. But the one nice thing I do want to show you all is that we can actually set a pricing limit. That way, in the worst case scenario that somebody accidentally gets a hold of our API key, they can run up the bill to, I don't know, I have my personal one set at $25, and then boom, I'm cut off. All right, so let's go ahead and show you how to do that. So once you are logged in, up at the top right corner, you will see the drop-down menu with the name and stuff. So what I want to show is, so we go to manage accounts here, and I just want to show that how cheap this actually is. So I've been doing my testing between yesterday and today only. So far, and I've done quite a bit of testing. I have only incurred one penny of cost here. So that should be encouraging. And in case if you're curious about pricing and stuff, I think that OpenAI pricing. All right, so yeah, all the pricing is on this page. So we are going to be making use of GPT 3.5 Turbo. So I do not have access to GPT-4, unfortunately, so we will not be testing out that today. But you can see how much it costs here. So you can see that it cost 0.002 pennies for what is known as 1,000 tokens, 1K tokens. Now, you might be wondering, what is a token? So a token is more or less a word. I say more or less a word. It is a 3 to 4 character kind of word. Oh, by the way, one other quick thing I forgot to mention. If you are watching on YouTube or LinkedIn right now, I am monitoring the question for chats, or the chat for questions, sorry. And so if you have any, feel free to drop them along the way, and I'll be glad to answer anything. So so this is GPT 3.5 Turbo. This is the one that we are going to be making use of. So that is it is very cheap, but let's say you are very concerned, just as I am, rightfully so, that you don't want to be overcharged or whatnot. Off on the left navigation here, you will see a billing tab, and then in billing here, we can do things like add our payment methods, add our usage limits, see the pricing FAQs and stuff. And so this is what I was talking about here. Now you have two different limits here. You have what is known as a soft limit. And this is the soft limit is just when, whenever you hit this dollar amount, you don't get cut off, but you do get an email. So like if I hit $10, I will get an email that says, hey, you've incurred $10, basically be careful. But like I've noted, you can set the hard limit at $25. So, or even lower than that if you want. So I set mine at $25. By default, it is $100. I think it is $100. Because you can see the approved usage limit is $120. So that is the absolute cap of these things. Now you'd have to be a large organization probably to hit this, and even in the end you would probably exceed this. Now you can, as you can see, request an increase. I'm not going to do that because I don't have any need to do that. I'm going to stick with my limits here. And like I noted, everybody's always wary to want to give a credit card or something with these. Because you don't want to act, with like the other cloud providers, for example, you can really rack up your credit card bill super high very quickly like that. But so this is very nice and very appreciated from OpenAI. Thank you, OpenAI, for being able to set these limits. Okay, so that is setting the limits. Oh, I guess one thing I did want to mention before we proceed forward, because we're talking about the OpenAI API specifically today, and you might be wondering, is that what I would specifically recommend for your company? And the answer is, it depends. The reason I'm covering OpenAI specifically is because they basically become like the McDonald's of generative AI at the moment. Like they're the one that you think of whenever you think about generative AI. They have all of their ducks in a row as far as, getting their API together and stuff. So that's why I'm covering this. But there are so many different options that are coming out literally every single week. By the end of this year, I highly anticipate we'll see entirely new offerings that we were not even expecting. And so you're just going to have to, analyze that with your company. And you may even explore multiple options. Like, I mentioned the aforementioned Salesforce Einstein GPT. Maybe, if you have a Salesforce product, and you really like that capability, and you can just flip on a switch and it gets you up and going like boom, boom, boom. Maybe that is a good option for you, and exploring something like the OpenAI API. So all that to say, I'm not married to one solution or necessarily OpenAI as a solution. I just wanted to demonstrate this just because OpenAI, to their credit, has made it very easy to interact with this. Okay. So, all right. Anyway, so that is that. So I mentioned we needed to get 2 bits of information in order to interact with the API. The first thing that we need is the organization ID. So, like I mentioned, you can get that from the organization settings, and then you can see the org ID here. So you're going to want to save this in a place that you can load safely, and I'll show you what I do. It's not the best way, but it's a way that it's a somewhat safe way, I guess. Like it's better than just keeping them fully exposed. So like I said, this is a unique identifier. I'm flaunting this right now. This is probably a bad practice. I would not go sharing this organization ID. And then the other thing that we will also need to generate is the API key. So off on the left navigation, you can see that I have my API key. It's been masked. And then you can delete and regenerate one if you need to. Be very, very careful with this one. You definitely don't want to expose this one. It is masked here. It's something like, I don't know, like 40 characters, maybe less than that. But yeah, so that is the 2 bits of information that you will need to save appropriately. So again, be very careful not to expose this. And, even though this one is technically speaking not sensitive, I would not go flaunting this one either. So I've saved both of these into a local file. So actually, the way I've saved them is, so this is my IntelliJ here, so you can kind of see off on the left navigation. I apologize if that's hard to read. So I have a keys directory, and then in the keys directory, I have 2 YAML files. One of them actually has my my real API key and my real organization ID. I'm not going to show that one, as you might understand. But I did create a test keys YAML just because I want to show you this. And I've showed this in other streams before, but this is again, this is not really the most secure way. If you are in an enterprise, you may use something like HashiCorp Vault for this, something instead. I'm just keeping it simple. So what I'm doing is I have this keys directory, I have the YAML file saved in here, and then in order to make sure that I don't accidentally push it up to GitHub, I have what is known as a git ignore file here. And if you are not familiar with what a git ignore file is, it's basically you say, okay, anything that is in this file here, whether it be these things that like the JetBrains kind of directories, or anything that ends with this .opt extension, do not push those up to GitHub, or do not manage those with Git. So, and you can see here, I've added my own here, the sensitive directory, or the keys directory, I guess. I don't know why I have sensitive in there. But this is basically saying, I do not want this pushed up to GitHub. And then I can actually make reference to this file appropriately from my notebooks directory or my other things, and then so I can make use of these keys and show you how I will interact with them without ever actually exposing them to you during this live stream. Okay, so that is setting the table for what comes next. So what comes next is we're gonna do a couple things in the Jupyter Notebook. Well, actually, I'm gonna show you the OpenAI Playground. And then we'll get into the Jupyter Notebook. So let's look at the OpenAI Playground. So whenever you are logged into this interface here, you will notice at the top toward the center there is this Playground button. And what this Playground button is basically a way to interact with the ChatGPT or the GPT UI. API, without necessarily having to program anything yourself. And so there are actually a couple different modes. Like I said, we're only going to cover text today, and there's actually 4 different modes of text. And this can be a little bit confusing, but once I explain it to you, it won't be too bad. So this is what is known as completion mode. And so the best way I can describe completion mode is basically like a single prompt, single response kind of thing. There is no back and forth. You just ask it one thing and it returns one response back to you. That is different than what you may already be familiar with in the ChatGPT interface as the chat. And we'll come back to this one in a second, but basically the chat is the functionality that actually allows us to do the conversational thing, or remembers the context and everything. So so this is so let me go back to completion here for a second. We're going to start off on completion. These parameters here on the right, denoted by these sliders, this is what I was talking about when I meant like there is some customization here that you can do that is not present in the vanilla ChatGPT user interface. So like, for example, temperature. If you do not know what temperature is here, oh, look at that. I did not even know it would show that. So there you go. So basically what temperature is saying is if I turn up the temperature more and more and more, it's going to get, basically more creative, but it is going to be less grounded in truth, meaning that it is, it's going to take certain liberties and just be fine with it. If I turn down the temperature, it's going to try to be more what is called deterministic here and repetitive, and it's going to try returning the same output over and over. So if you've used the ChatGPT interface, you'll know that you can insert a prompt. And I guess I've been using the word prompt. Let me back up for a second if you don't know what a prompt is. Basically, a prompt is a user input into one of these chat models. So when I put my prompt in, if you are a large organization and you want to be able to regenerate responses in a more repetitive manner, you may want to turn down this temperature. And so that's probably one of the most important parameters. But there's also a ton of other handy parameters here. Because the ChatGPT interface can return a huge body of text. But let's say you want to make sure that every response is always only a certain amount of tokens. You can limit that here. And then there are a bunch of other other parameters that we can also alter as well. Now, to be transparent, I'm not really going to go fiddling around with these too much. I just wanted to make you aware that they are here. And this temperature parameter here is probably the most important one to most people. Because if you are an organization that values repetitiveness and some sort of determination here, you want to turn this down. However, if you want to get really creative and just kind of go ham, I would turn that temperature all the way up. And I don't know what the default is for ChatGPT. I would assume it's 0.7, just given the default value here. Yeah, and so the other thing I want to note here is you can actually select a number of different models that OpenAI offers. I'm not going to go into depth explaining all of these because transparently I'm not super familiar with them. And the most popular one anyway is working with ChatGPT it's GPT 3.5 Turbo, or in the case of this scenario, Text DaVinci 003. All right, so that is the completion mode. And basically, so you could see here, we can actually go ahead and play with this right now. So, what do we want to do? I don't know. Say hello to all the viewers for me. All right. So to all you viewers, I'm going to go click the submit button. Sorry if that's hard to see there. And we see a response. That was a very basic response. But that's it. So you will see that this interface does not offer any sort of additional conversational sorts of aspects. That is where the chat, the functionality comes in. Now, I do want to mention these other two really quick, but we're not going to really cover them in depth just because I personally don't know what you would use these for. Like, I'm sure that somebody's got a reason for wanting to use these. So that is insert. And so what insert allows you to do is, let's say GPT returns a response to you, and you like it, but you would like it fleshed out a little bit. You want like some additional information. You can actually take this insert and say, I like your output, but basically I want you to inject some additional context around this certain context or around the response that you gave. And so you can insert saying, okay, I want more information on this thing, and it would insert that to the response. Again, I don't know why you'd want to do that instead of just using the straight completion or the chat. And then similar with edit. So edit's basically saying, the first thing that I showed you right off the bat was, I asked my Jar Jar Binks guy, like, what is the capital of Illinois? You could use this edit here to say, I really want the capital of Illinois, but I don't want Jar Jar Binks. I want Yoda or something like that. So that's basically what these two are. Like I said, I don't know why, I'm sure that there probably is a use case for wanting to use these two, but I'm personally just not that interested. And I'm sure that you all are going to be more interested in these other features instead. All right. So that is the OpenAI Playground. This is basically just a space to interact with the API directly. Now, the one kind of cool thing is, at least for completion mode, you will see up in the top right corner that you can actually view the code associated to what we're going to be doing here. So, you got Python here, and this is what we're going to be doing today, or you could do it via curl or Node.js. And like I said, in this live stream, because I am personally most comfortable working with Python, we are going to be working with Python today. All right. I've done a lot of talking. All right, let me take a quick sip of my drink here. Anybody have any questions so far? I know we're rolling along fast, but that's because I want to make sure that we hit all this in an appropriate time here. Okay, so what do I want to do next? All right, let us go ahead and open up a Jupyter notebook. And let's go ahead and start interacting with the API. I want to show you more about the API, and then we're going to properly do everything in our like a actual Python script. So let me go ahead and start up a Jupyter notebook. Okay. All right, I'm going to go into notebooks. I'm going to go start a new notebook. All right. Oh, I guess that is the one thing I should have said. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is, if you do not already have it installed, you are going to need to install the OpenAI Python library. So the way that we do that, pretty simple, is pip3 or pip install OpenAI. And you can see I've already got everything there, so I'm good to go. All right. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to import. I'm going to import YAML because we're going to be loading our API keys from the YAML. I'm going to call this livestream notebook. Let's see if I can make this bigger for y'all. Okay. Okay, so we're going to import YAML, and we're going to import OpenAI. All right, so that is the first one there. All right, so I mentioned before, I don't want to show you my OpenAI YAML file here, so I do have this dummy file here. This is how it works. Basically, it's key value pairs, so we have the key of dummy API key, and this is my fake value here. And the way that we do this is we basically open up the YAML file, and we use this YAML library to actually load this thing up here. So let me go ahead and demonstrate this with my test file. That way I don't, I obviously don't mind exposing that. So that is one directory up, /keys/test keys.yaml. I'm going to open it as F. All right. And then I'm going to put test YAML equals YAML.safeload F. All right. Now let's go ahead and look at this variable here, this test YAML here. So this, just like you saw in my over here, you can see that we got the dummy API key, and we actually have the API key as a string itself. So if I wanted to reference that directly, just getting only this piece here, we do that just as we do any other Python dictionary, and that is with the brackets and then the quotes here. I'm going to put dummy API key. And there we go. So that is the dummy API key. Now I'm going to load up my real API key, but I will not show this. I just wanted to show or expose that. I just wanted to show this for your own purposes here, just to show you what I'm doing. Again, if you work in a legit company, find a better way than this. This is David's hacky way of doing things on my local workstation. If I were doing this for my own company, I would definitely be using HashiCorp Vault. Absolutely. I would not be doing it the way I'm doing it right now. All right, so let me go ahead and open up the real key. So open keys, OpenAI YAML as F. All right, and I'm going to put keys YAML equals YAML.safeload F. Oh, forgot my colon. Sorry about that. All right, now, so the keys are in this YAML. I will not show that. So we need to, so now that we've imported the OpenAI library, we need to set these, the organization value and the API key value appropriately, and then we can be on our way. So this is, again, like I said, very simple. What we're going to do here is OpenAI.organization equals keys YAML. And like I said, I do have a key in here known as org ID, and then OpenAI dot API key equals keys YAML API key. Okay, and that's it. So that's where I was saying this is really simple to get up and going. This is all we need to do. I am authenticated with the, I am now set up to be interacting with the OpenAI API through the use of this specialized Python library. And so the first thing I want to just show you really quick is, just let's test things out by listing all of the models that we have available. So, like I mentioned here, I started to look at this drop-down list. There is a whole mess of these things. So let's go ahead and just show that really quick. So the way that we do that, OpenAI.model.list, and that is going to produce a huge list of things. Now, like I said, we are going to stick with GPT 3.5 Turbo specifically, but there is just a whole mess of these things. But you can see that I'm already good to go. Or if I did not set these things appropriately, I don't think I would have been able to interact with the API like I did just now. So that is just showing the models. Now, let's say I just wanted to look at a very specific model, like just the information about these things. And the way I can do that is by running a this command here. So like so this was just listing all the models. So if we wanted to just look at text DaVinci 003, the way that we do that is openai.model.retrieve text DaVinci 003. Okay. All right. I'm just making sure that my stream is not cut out. All right. We're good still. All right. So this is just giving us information only about text DaVinci 3. All right. So that's some pretty basic stuff. Now let's move on to something that's a little bit more fun, and then we're going to get into the real fun. So the first thing I want to cover here is, like I mentioned, I want to cover what is known as completions. So completions, this is the original thing that they offered through their API. Like I said, this is not really conversational. This is basically just like you have one prompt, one response, end of story. But the nice thing is it's actually really easy to get going with this. So the way that we do this is we go to OpenAI .completion.create. All right, and so we need to pass in at the minimum 2 different parameters. So at the minimum, we need to pass in the model type. And so I mentioned that we're going to be using. So for the completions, you actually specifically have to do like you have to use the text DaVinci 003. So I'm going to use text DaVinci 003. And then the next parameter that we have to put in is our prompt. And this can be whatever the heck we want it to be. So let's say write a tagline for live streams about GPT-3. All right, let's see what it comes up with. Okay. That is the weakest tagline, but I also gave it like no parameters. So you can see here. So, and this is something that I hid in the actual, whenever I was actually showing you what to do here in this other interface. But you're actually getting a lot more information that you can do with whenever you actually use the API this way. So you can see here that we actually do get our response in the choices here. So you can see that the text that the tagline it wrote was unlock the power of GPT-3 with live streams. Yeah. But then you can see other reasons. You know, the reason that it finished was, you know, it finished just because it like we were done basically. Like I said, with the API, you can actually say, you know, I only wanted to return so many tokens or so many characters. And then down here, you can see with the usage, you can actually see how many tokens were passed in versus how many tokens were actually returned, and then the total tokens here. So there's a lot that is being offered here. Now, this is just completions. You know, like I said, we are working our way from small to big. But you could see how fast this is already going. Like when I first started, I actually just started researching this live stream yesterday, and I thought it was going to take me a lot longer to figure this out, but man, I got going really quick. Thank you for your great documentation, OpenAI. Okay, so that's basically completions. I mean, we can do this again. What do we want to do? Tell me well, I don't know. Tell the live stream viewers how awesome they are in the voice of Yoda. All right, I'm just curious. You're inspiring your awesomeness says, I'm not even going to attempt to do the voice, so don't ask. So yeah, you could see, so that's basically completions. Now, so that is, you know, completions is, you know, just like I said, it's like a truncated version of like the chats, but what you're probably really interested to see is the chat functionality. And this is where things start to get pretty interesting. And I want to step back into the playground for a minute. Oops, sorry about that. All right, so here we have this user interface can be a little bit confusing the first time you see it, because we actually have a couple different things here. You can see that we have off on the left, we actually have 3 different things going on here, 3 different users. We have a system, we have the user, and we have the assistant. And what these 3 things represent are, so the system represents, and you can kind of see by the grayed out text here, we're not going to cover deep prompt engineering in this stream today, but I am considering doing a different stream more specifically on prompt engineering. And basically what prompt engineering is this idea of, in order to get, with all predictive models, it's garbage in, garbage out, or good stuff in, good stuff out. And so when it comes to prompt engineering, the way that you get the best results is by passing in the appropriate context for actually, those results. And so we call that, just really quick, that is known as grounding or priming. That is where we are giving some sort of truth-based value, and we want, the system to always maintain that whenever we're actually doing our stuff here. So that's system. So just a spoiler alert, this is how I did the Jar Jar Binks thing in my other thing, and I'll show you how I did that in a little bit. It's actually not too bad. So that is system, and then we have user. So user is the actual where the user is actually inputting the prompt. And then the assistant, now this is really interesting, and I need to do a little bit more research on this. The assistant, so, let's go back to like the vanilla ChatGPT interface here. And so you can see here, I was asking for some regex around how to look for social security numbers, and that will actually come up relevant here in a minute. But basically, if you look at this interface here, so you see my face here, this would represent the user. And then you have this whole block here, which is basically the response from GPT. This would represent the assistant. And basically what it's doing is when you basically just create this whole chat flow, basically. So you start off with your system to do the grounding or the priming or just the stupid stuff like I did with Jar Jar Binks. But then you have the user that's actually doing the input, and then you have the assistant that's actually represented by this prompt. And so then after, let's say I just asked this one question here. So the way that it would be represented by the structure, the Python dictionary structure that I'm going to be showing is once when I ask this next question, I don't just ask this question, I pass back everything. So I pass back my original question, and I pass back what was returned to the user. Now, that's a little bit confusing just right off the bat. So let me go ahead. This will make more sense whenever we actually demonstrate this in the live stream notebook here. All right, so let's go back to the notebook here, and I'm going to call this the chat completion, or chats. I'm just going to call that chats because that's what they call it. All right, let me zoom in again. Whew, I'm winded. All right. What am I doing here? All right. So what I want to do here is first things first, I'm going to, like I said, we're going to be creating a list of dictionary values that represent each one of these roles. If you're having trouble following along, this will make sense more so in a minute. So let's go ahead and instantiate our chat flow. It doesn't have to be called chat flow. I just like calling it chat flow because that kind of makes sense to me. So like I said, we have to do a list, and it's going to be a Python dictionary. So we have to set our role. So I mentioned there are 3 roles: system, user, and assistant. So our first one is going to be system, and I'm going to say you are, what did I call this in my thing over here? I'm just going to copy and paste this here. So this is the grounding that I provided earlier. So you are Jar Jar Binks, an assistant that speaks like Jar Jar Binks from Star Wars. So that is how I'm going to start things off. What did I screw up here? Oops. Sorry. I meant to put role, system, and then you have to put content. There you go. And so this is the basic structure of a chat flow. And so we are going to continue appending things to this flow in order to do the conversational link interface. So let me go ahead. I'll go ahead and run this again because I screwed that up. All right. So let's say I have a user prompt. User prompt is equals what is the capital of Illinois. So this is the same thing that I was passing in earlier. So this is just a basic string, nothing fancy going on here. Now I'm going to append this up into my chat flow. And then we're going to show this chat flow and show what we're going to be actually passing to ChatGPT in the Python-based API here. So the way that we do that is chat flow. Oops, sorry about that. Flow.append. We're going to add a new role. And this is going to be our user because this is what I as the user am submitting as my prompt into the API. And then same idea here. We're going to pass in the content, and the content here is going to be the user prompt. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at the chat flow again. because this is going to start making more sense now that we can see this. So we basically have a list of two values here. We have a first, we have our system that is basically saying, all right, it's basically saying we are grounded as we are now Jar Jar Binks. All right, everything that we return back going forward is going to be in stupid Jar Jar Binks language. And then I have my question here. Now, we are basically ready to, you saw what we did up here. This is going to be very similar down here below. So let's go ahead and invoke the API. So I'm going to save the response as chat response equals OpenAI.chat completion.create. And then again, we have two parameters that we're going to pass in here. So the model here is now we're going to get into GPT 3.5 turbo, and and then we have to pass in our messages, and that is basically our chat flow. Again, we don't have to call it chat flow. I just call it chat flow because that makes sense in my mind. All right, so I'm executing that. What did I do wrong? Connection aborted. What? All right, hopefully I didn't screw something up here. Let's try this again. Okay, I don't know what happened there. Had a little blip there, but let's go ahead and look at the chat response here. All right, so now in the other Python script, the only thing that you saw was this content piece here. So you could see, this is always going to make me laugh. So we are always so there's our actual content, and you can see that we are now seeing the role of assistant, because this is the response that we are getting back from the flow. And then if we wanted to continue the conversation, what we need to do is we need to take this little piece of information here, pass it back into our chat flow, and pass it back into the API. And so you're going to see, let's go ahead and do that right now. So the way that we can do that is, and then you can see we have similar other information showing just how many, how many tokens we use and other things like that. And I'm not sure what this is necessarily, but yeah, let's go ahead and add this to our chat flow. So the way that we do that here is chat flow.append role. And so now we have the role of assistant, because this is the assistant that gave us the response back. All right, so role of assistant, and our content here, apologies, is going to be, not contents, is going to be chat response. Now, it's kind of difficult to see this, but there is actually, under this choices, you can see that this actually is like a curly braces, meaning that we do have to pass in an index value of 0 in order to get this response back appropriately. So we need to do choices, 0, and then it's what? Message, and then content, message, and content. All right. Now let's go ahead and look at our chat flow again, just to show you what it looks like at this point. Okay, so now you can see that we have 3 entries. We are just building this chat flow over and over, and then and this is going to keep the conversation going appropriately. So we have the system that is instantiating things as Jar Jar Binks. We have my original question is, what is the capital of Illinois? And then we have the first response of knowing that the capital is Springfield. Now let's say I wanted to ask my next question. So let's go ahead and ask this next question. And I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste these things down here, because basically we're doing the exact same thing that we did up here. We're going to add another dealio here, another like prompt into the chat flow. So I'm going to ask, what is the largest city in that state? Now I'm purposefully wording it this way because if this was like the first time we were asking this question, our buddy Jar Jar wouldn't know what state we're talking about. But because we have already set this whole context here, Jar Jar will know we were already talking about Illinois. So the largest city in Illinois is Chicago. All right, so we've already done that. All right, and now let's go ahead and do this once again. So we are going to get our chat response, and then we're going to pass in our flow. All right, and now we'll wait a second. All right, and you can see this thing is like, golly, it's fast. All right, so chat response. All right, so there we go, and there is our response. And recall, we did not specify in this last prompt what state we were talking about, but it remembered. And this is the interesting piece to me, is I kind of have always wondered like how it remembered, but now it seems to me that the way it's remembering is it's not really remembering. You're just passing in the full context as if it's basically one just long prompt. I don't know that for sure, but it kind of seems to make sense to me. Okay, so, and that is basically it. That is how we do the interaction with this whole thing. So now that we've done everything in the Jupyter Notebook, let's jump back over into IntelliJ and put this all together and actually add one other thing in front of this too in order to prevent sensitive data from going out to the API. So specifically what we're going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of what is known as regex, regular expressions, and that is going to detect what it appears to be a social security number. And I'm going to put in just some fake numbers for a social security number, and you will see it will catch it and it will never go out to the API. And that is one of the great benefits of interacting with the API. All right, so I am going to close these things out. I'm going to hide that. I'm going to start a new file here. And I'm going to call this file livestream chat.py. All right. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to import our Python libraries, importing the necessary Python libraries. Okay, and so I'm going to import re, so that is for regular expressions. Let me make this bigger for y'all. We're going to import YAML once again, you know why. We're going to import OpenAI, again, you know why. And we are going to import what is known as Inquirer. Now, you might not recall Inquirer. We actually did use Inquirer in a previous live stream. Basically, here, let me just show you really quick what Inquirer does. All right. I'm going to go ahead and shut down my Jupyter Notebook because I don't need this anymore. All right, yes. All right, clear. All right, CD source. All right, so Python 3 chat. Okay, so this is a test. Okay, so I'm gonna get some sort of response. I've never got, I gotta laugh at that. But basically, so Inquirer here, you can see that I've got like these options here that we can select from. That's basically what Inquirer does. That's all it does, is it allows us to do this. I'm using the arrow keys on my keyboard right now, and I can select from one of these three options. If I select end program, it just ends the program. All right, so that's what Inquirer does. Yes, I know the kernel's died because I just killed it. And that's okay, because we are done with you for now. Well, we're done with you for the stream. All right. Okay, so we have imported all those things. Now, what we want to do here is we want, did I spell that right? Inquirer. Okay, so I think that's right. Now we want to, so I'm going to put API instantiation. So this is going to be the same thing that we did at the top of the Jupyter Notebook before. So we're going to load the keys up from the YAML file, and then we're going to set them appropriately so that way we can interact with the ChatGPT UI. All right, or API. Oh my gosh, I'm going to constantly screw up those terms. All right, so with open oh golly, get out of my face there. All right, keys. OpenAI keys.yaml as f. All right, so I'm going to put keys YAML equals YAML dot safe load f. All right, now we need to set the keys associated here. So we need to put OpenAI dot organization equals keys YAML org ID. So remember, we need 2 bits of information. We need the org ID, and then we need the API key. So API key equals keys YAML, API key. All right, so that is the API instantiation. Now, I like to use these weird like fake header things. So I'm gonna add a fake header, but then we're gonna skip on down a little bit, and then we're gonna come back to this. I'm gonna call this next fake header helper function. So we're gonna add some helper functions along the way. But we're going to start with the actual script invocation first, and then we'll come back and populate these here in a second. So I'm going to, all right, so then we got the script invocation. So script invocation. So this is how I like to break up my code. I know Pep8 hates this, but I like it. All right, script invocation. Okay, so basically what we're going to do here is, so if name underscore name equals main name, if name, oh my gosh, Oh my gosh, can I that red line is really throwing me off right now. All right, equals main. All right, so this is basically saying when we invoked our script. All right, so the very first thing I want to do is I want to just print a quick welcome statement. So I'm going to say, welcome to our live stream, GPT chat dealio. Yeah. And then, okay, so what we need to do a couple things. So we're going to need to initiate our chat flow. We're going to need to initiate a thing that allows the user to input a prompt from the command line there. And then we're going to need to check to see if there is any sensitive data. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to add a helper function that initiates the chat flow. So I'm going to call this def initiate chat flow. We're not going to pass, there's going to be nothing passed into it. This is basically just going to instantiate what I want to pass or start off the chat flow with. All right, so the way that we do this is I'm just going to say chat flow equals the brackets, and then we have our curly braces here. So we're going to start off role, system, content, you are... What did I call that? Oh my gosh, I can't even remember now. Hold on just a second. Is this going to load? I can't. Sorry about that. I'm looking at something on my bottom screen here. Anybody have any questions or anything? I haven't seen any questions come through yet, but that's okay. All right, so what did I want to do here? Okay, so I wanted to say you were an assistant that talks like Jar Jar Binks from Star Wars. So this is the piece right here. Again, as the system, I'm going to make everything that is returned from our prompts here in the form of Jar Jar Binks from Star Wars. All right, so that is our chat flow, and then I want to return the chat flow. Return chat flow. All right, so we are printing out our first statement, and then we want to instantiate our chat flow. So starting an initial chat flow. So I'm going to call this chat flow equals initiate chat flow. Okay, now I'm going to I'm going to put a reiterating loop that basically goes over and over this next bit of code until it is appropriately stopped. And so I'm going to call this starting a reiterating loop for the prompts. Okay. All right, so we've already instantiated our chat flow. We welcomed our people. So the first thing that we need to do, okay, so we're going to say while true. All right, so that's basically how we have a recurring flow that keeps going and going and going and going and going in Python until we have something that breaks out of that loop, which we will do appropriately. And so the first thing that we want to do is we want to get our user prompt from the user. So we're going to say retrieving the prompt from the user. Oops. And the way that we do that, this is actually pretty easy in Python. Why is this not tabbing over right? That's odd. I hope I didn't do something wrong. I bet I did something wrong, but we'll figure it out along the way. All right, so user prompt equals, so Python, the way that we do that is we just put input, and then we can actually put a message here of what we want to, or like if we want to ask the user something as we are prompting them for something. So I'm going to say, what would you like to ask? And then I'm going to put what is known as a new line character. So that new line character basically says whenever we actually display this in the user, in the command line interface, do a new line before you actually allow the user to actually put their thing in. So that's actually getting the prompt. Now, before we invoke the API, recall that I mentioned that we want to check if there's any sensitive data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new helper function up here. And you can, and this is just a dummy way to check things. Like I said, we're going to be looking for social security numbers specifically, but there are lots of different things you could do here. You could go, if you already have some sort of API or some sort of logic in your business interface that already filters out sensitive information appropriately, you can go ahead and pop that right in here. We're gonna keep things basic here today, but I just want to show you the power of what you can potentially do. So I'm going to create another helper function here. I'm going to call this one check sensitive data, and we're going to be passing in the user prompt to this because we want to check the user prompt. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to establish a little bit of regex to actually look for like the strings containing social security numbers. Now, as I kind of showed off here, I actually I'm really terrible. Almost everybody is terrible at writing regex, so I just asked ChatGPT to give me the regex. So I'm gonna just go ahead and copy and paste that here. So this is establishing a little bit of regex, and then we are going to set a Boolean value, and the Boolean value being a true or false value to basically see, okay, does this thing have a social security number in it or not? And so the way that we do that is, so I'm gonna call this checking to see if there is a match based on the regex. All right, and so the way that we do that, I'm gonna call this has sensitive data. Has sensitive data equals bool. And so this stands for regular expressions again, re.search. So we're going to pass in first our pattern that we're looking for. So that is going to be our SSN regex there. And then we're going to pass in our user prompt. And so what this is going to do is basically it's going to take our user prompt. It's going to use this bit of regex magic going on right here to look for social security numbers. And it's going to give a true or false value if there is sensitive data in here. So if it does find something, this value will be true. If not, it will be false. So let's go ahead and return that. So return has sensitive data. All right, so let's go ahead and put that down here in our actual script invocation here. So I'm going to call this checking the prompt checking the prompt for any sensitive data. Okay. Okay, and the way that I'm going to do that is has sensitive data equals check sensitive data, and then we're going to pass in our user prompt. Okay, so again, what this command here is doing, sorry, I just realized that my face was in the way there. What this command here is doing, actually, let me move my face up. That might help you. There we go. All right. The has sensitive data, like, so this is the chat that we're actually, or the prompt that we're actually going to be inputting with our own keyboard and stuff. It's going to be saved to this variable, and then we're going to pass this variable into check sensitive data to see if there's any sensitive data. Now, if there is sensitive data, we do not want it to go to the API. So what we're going to do here, this is pretty basic. You can do multiple things. That's the beauty of these programmatic things, is we're just going to say, we're going to print out a statement that says you've got some sensitive data. You need to resubmit a new prompt with nothing there. So recall that this is a Boolean value. So basically I'm saying if has sensitive data. So basically if this is true, then I'm going to say print your prompt appears to have sensitive data in the body of the text. Please remove this sensitive data and resubmit. Okay. And then, all right, so that's my line that I'm going to be printing out. And then what I want to do here, so like recall that we are doing a reiterating loop through all these things. So if I wanted to continue this loop, but I did not want to proceed forward with any of the other code, the way that we do that in Python is with this line here known as continue. So this is basically saying, okay, when we hit this point, if we have sensitive data, we're going to print out a message to our user, and then we're going to circle back around here, and notice we are not adding this prompt into our chat flow. We do not want to do that. So it's just going to say, circle back around here, ask for a new prompt, check again, and keep doing this baloney until we get rid of that darn social security number. All right. Okay, so that is checking for our sensitive data. And so you can see, this is really flexible. You can really do a whole lot of different things with this. But this is also really nice because, like I said, if you are working in a large organization and you really, really, really want to protect your data, this is one way that you can do it, as opposed to, just saying, be careful with the user interface. And, you do hope that people don't do anything with the user interface like this interface here. But, people are people. Unfortunately, the stuff happens. All right, so let's go ahead and so that's pretty basic here. So let's go ahead and proceed forward. So what we're going to do here is we are going to, just like we did in the Jupyter Notebook, we're going to add our prompt, assuming that we're already good. We don't have any sensitive data anymore in here. We're going to add this to our user flow. So we're going to say appending the user prompt to the chat flow. So chat flow dot append And then we're going to put user, I'm sorry, role user. And then we are going to put content is our user prompt. All right, so we are adding this to the chat flow. And now we are going to pass this into OpenAI in order to get the response back. All right, so we're going to call this obtaining I'm taking a break from talking right now because my voice hurts. But basically, this is the same thing that we did in the Jupyter Notebook. So model equals 2.t 3.5 turbo. And messages equals chat flow. Okay, so this is going to give back a whole block. But the user, from a user-friendly perspective, they don't want to see all that information that we were seeing before in our Jupyter Notebook. They don't really care how many tokens were returned. They just want to see the message itself. So that's what we're going to be printing out next here. So printing OpenAI's response back to the user. All right, there we go. So I'm going to do print. And then I'm going to do an F string here. So if you don't know what an F string here, an F string is basically, it allows us to pop in variables alongside string values. So basically what I want to do here is I want to do a new line, and then I want to put GPT or OpenAI's, gosh darn it, OpenAI's response. And then in our curly braces here, we're going to put the actual response. And so that is going to be chat response. And then the response is going to be, this is the same thing that we were covering earlier. So choices 0, message, content, and then I'm going to put another new line character after this whole thing is done. All right. So that is printing back the response to the user. All right. Just making sure that the syntax looks all clean here. All right. I think that's fine. All right. I'm sure that I have done something wrong. It always happens. It never fails. All right. So basically, all right. So that is our prompt. So let's recap again. So we are starting off our prompt. We are checking for sensitive data, and we are adding our prompt to the chat flow. Now, so next comes, do we want to continue the conversation as if it's a conversational format? Do we want to restart the conversation for whatever reason, or do we want to exit the program? So that is where we were talking about inquire. And so I'm going to create a new helper function, our third and final helper function, and I'm going to call this prompt next choice. So this is going to be the three choices that you were seeing that you could select with the arrow keys. That's what this function here is going to be doing. So def prompt next choice. All right, no parameters here. So let's go ahead and set what our user choices are going to be. So I'm going to call this setting the list of options that the user can select from. Okay, so I'm going to call this user choices equals again. We're going to have inquire dot list. All right, and then we need to pass, I don't remember what this first value is for, but we need to include it. So user choices, and then we're going to send a message, all right, and to the user, and then it's going to ask them a question. All right, would you like to continue the conversation? Would you like to continue the conversation? All right, so there's that, and then let's go ahead and instantiate our choice values. So our choices are going to be yes, I got to put it as a list. Yes, start new conversation, or end program. All right, so those are our lists, and then the way we actually invoke that is doing inquire dot prompt. So this is going to prompt the user to select from one of these choices, and then we actually need to get the value out of here using this user choices thing right here. Well, I'll just type it out. User choices. All right. Now I want to say this is a variable because we obviously want to return this back. So I'm going to call this next action. Next action equals, all right, and I didn't put an annotated comment here, retrieving the selected option by the user, All right, and then we'll return this back. Return next action. Not next action. All right. All right, so that is our third and final helper function. So what we're going to do down here is after this print statement is we're going to prompt our user. So prompting the user if they would like to continue, blah, 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 because I'm too lazy to type out anything else. All right, so the way that we do this is we're going to say next action equals prompt next choice. So that's going to be prompting them. And then we have our if. This is where we come into our if statements, and this is how we either continue the conversation or we just end the program or whatever the appropriate action is. So let's go ahead and say, we do want to continue this conversation. So if next action equals yes. So recall that the question was, would you like to continue the conversation? So if we say yes, so what we want to do here is just like we did in the Jupyter Notebook, we want to append the response as an assistant back to our chat flow, and then we're going to pass the whole thing back through again. So basically what I'm going to do here is appending the result of the chat response to the chat flow for continued conversation. All right. It's bugging me that it's not tabbing over, which makes me think that something is kind of screwy up here. I will find it. I'm sure that something's going on here. All right. All right. So I'm going to put chat flow dot append. All right. So role is assistant. Recall, because this is the response that we are getting back. What do we want to do? All right. So content is going to be this same long spiel here. So I'm going to just copy and paste this. So copy, paste. All right. So that is if we want to continue the conversation. All right. So that is option number one. All right. Let's go ahead and handle option number two. So if it's option number two, next action, action equals, what is it called? Start new conversation. So you can, you might be already be ahead of me in figuring out what we're doing here. Basically, is in order to do that, we basically just have to reinstantiate the chat flow. So we're basically just going to clear everything out again. So the way that we're going to do that is so we're initiating the chat flow. All right, so I'm gonna this is why I created the helper function to do this. So we can do this really easily. We're gonna just say chat flow equals initiate chat flow. Is that what we call it? Yeah. All right. So that's that. And then elif our final action. So if next action equals what is it? End program. End program, is that correct? All right. Yeah. End program. Then we are just going to exit with a 0 code. All right. And so And what this is going to do is, so, like I said, while we have this while true block going on here, is this is going to keep going over and over and over until we stop. And so you could see that whenever we get to this block, like let's say we wanted to continue their conversation, what's going to happen here is after we execute this block, it's going to ignore these other two blocks down here, but we still maintain the chat flow. So the chat flow is maintained up here. And so we come back again, what would you like to ask? And then we check for the sensitive data. We add it. We go back to the API and we keep going down the line. If we want to keep the conversation going, we do the same thing over and over. Or if we want to start a new conversation, we initiate a new chat flow. We keep going back over and over and over here. I apologize if I sound like a little bit of a broken record. I'm trying to really drive home what we're doing here, and I'm trying to make it as simple as possible for y'all. And then finally, this will finally terminate if we hit the end program button. So like I said, I think I probably screwed something up in here, but let's see how this works. So let's go ahead and clear this out. Python 3, live stream chat. Okay, so what would we like to ask? Let's pick a different state. Let's pick our neighboring state. No, we need to pick a state that's got a large city versus large capital. All right, so what is the capital of New York? All right, so I'm going to ask what's the capital of New York. All right, syntax issue there. Minor one, but we got to deal with it. All right. So it looks like I accidentally put point turbo. Meant to put dash. Sorry. All right. Let's hopefully that's the only issue that we have. All right. What is the capital of New York? All right. And there we go. Let me make this to where you can see a little bit better. Sorry, my screen's a little bit weird where I can't really see things super well. All right, so the capital of New York is Albany, and we have our Jar Jar Binks-like character here. So if we want to continue the conversation, again, this is where Inquire is really handy to be able to do the arrow key functionality here. And let me make this a little bit smaller even. All right, there we go. And all right, so we want to continue the conversation. Now, we have the context already that this is New York, so let's go ahead and ask it, what is the largest city in that state? What is the largest city in that state? All right, so the largest city in that state is New York City, which is obviously correct, and it knew this context based off of the chat flow that we are just looping over. Now, just to demonstrate that this does work, let's start a new conversation, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to ask, what is the largest city in that state? Now, Jar Jar should be pretty confused here because I have not specified a state as part of this new conversation, so let's see if this works out correctly. All right. So it's taking a little bit. The city. So he's clearly just that. This is one of the funniest responses I've ever seen. So like he clearly doesn't know which city we're talking about, but that is because we cleared out the chat flow and the context is no longer there. Let's go. Out of curiosity, why did you pick Houston of all cities? All right, so let's just ask just to see what the response is going to be. Help Mises. I don't know why it picked Texas, but obviously we did not select Texas here. And this is the thing that you have to be really careful, and why prompt engineering can be very helpful, because this is what we would call a hallucination. We did not ask it for the largest city in Texas. We just asked it what is the largest city, and it just guessed. We did not give any indication of Texas at all. This is, and so a hallucination in terms of LLMs like this, large language models like this, is when we pass on a prompt and it's a little bit ambiguous and the model gives us a response that is pulled out of thin air, basically. This response cracks me up. This is so freaking funny. So let's go ahead and end the program. And that's all I really wanted to cover today. So I'm really glad that things worked out well today. Like my stream did not cut out today, so that's great. And I hope you can see the value of using an API as opposed to the UI. Now, again, it is not free, but you can see how cheap it was. In fact, let's go back to our billing console. Let me go ahead and show this again really quick. All right, let me share my screen again. All right, let me come back here. And just to show you, we've been doing all this testing. I bet I've spent maybe 2 pennies. All right, pricing. I didn't want to do that. I meant to do manage account. Yeah, I don't care. All right, billing. So I've been charged, not even 2 cents. I've used 1 penny. 1 little penny. Now, obviously, the different models have different charge rates. So if you do, I don't have access to GPT-4, but if I did, I know that the GPT-4 charge is more expensive. However, you do have to right size what is important to your organization. If GPT 3.5 works out well, I would advise using that because it is, I think, 10% of the cost of GPT-4. So yeah, you just have to assess what's good for you, and you also have to assess, are there other solutions that are coming out? We had Google Bard start to, it's got its own user interface. It doesn't have an API quite yet. AWS has been a little bit tight-lipped about what they're going to be doing. They did announce a partnership with Hugging Face, but I'm not sure what's going to come of that partnership. But I am certain we are going to see more implementations similar to this. But this is the one, this, like I said, this is like the McDonald's of generative AI today. So I thought I'd cover this one. And I hope you all found this one really interesting. So any final questions before we wrap up today? I'm looking at the chats here. I'm not seeing anything. Okay. Well, I am going to go ahead and call it here. So I probably will do another stream at some point. Like I said, next week my wife is going to be in Colorado, so there won't be a stream next week for sure. But I do want to do one more specifically on good prompt engineering. Like we showed some basic prompt engineering here, but I want to show something that's a little bit more robust than what we showed today. Obviously, we just did Jar Jar Binks because that was funny. This ended up being one of the funniest live streams I've ever done. I had a good time. I hope you all had a good time and learned something today. And with that, I hope you all have a good weekend, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.